Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages, sexualities, and identities, and welcome back to another Doctor Who review. And today's Doctor Who review is none other than A Minute in Hell. So, what is A Minute in Hell about? Well, it seems the Doctor is trapped in his own personal hell as he finds himself stuck in a psychiatric ward full of psychos and crazy and people who have lost their mind. And apparently, he's no longer the Doctor. Instead, he's John Doe. Yes, if you're wondering, this is very similar to the whole coincidence that happens in the Doctor Who TV movie, where the Doctor gets mistaken for John Doe because they don't use John Smith. But, of course, the Doctor is not the only one in the States in this story. It also turns out that his most trusted ally, his oldest friend, his oldest colleague from UNIT, is also on a covert, undercover mission. Lester Gordon Lethbridge Stewart. I can't keep you out of my sight, can I, Doctor? The Brigadier himself has been sent by UNIT to understand and see why the Americans seem to have in this story a machine that can use your mind and project it somewhere else. On investigating this experiment and this treatment, the Brigadier starts to raise concerns on this brain machine, on how it can make people less agitated, less violent. And the people in charge keep trying to reassure him that everything's fine. But, knowing his own experience of the Brits using the machine, he begins to become very suspicious that instead they might be using it for ulterior motives. Of course, he's not wrong, because elsewhere, Miss Charlotte Pollard has found herself in a very peculiar situation. Her and this girl Betty find themselves waking up in this building. It seems the pair have been drugged. Well, either that or, more to the point, Charlie has lost her memory. Her friend seems to recount everything perfectly and points out to her that the pair were walking down the street when all of a sudden the pair of them got attacked by some men with guns who were the police officers. Charlie, very confused by this, points out that why would the police officers attack her? And then her friend points out that the police officers are in on this Hellfire Club. What was the Hellfire Club, I may hear my historians shouting at me? Well, the Hellfire Club was an 18th century club, very exclusive, made by the aristocrats, where people used to go and have sex in private. But only the people with money, of course, because all us peasants have to do it out in the fields. The police, the government, anybody and everybody in that circle would find themselves somehow part of this Hellfire Club. The very exclusive underground Hellfire Club, I might add. What happened to the Hellfire Club, you may ask? Does it still exist? Well, yes, little remnants of it still exist around in the world. But of course, the original place is now a visiting place for people. It's more of a kind of underground bit of history that has been turned into a museum. Now back to the story. The Doctor is still lost, and Charlotte Pollard, of course, as I mentioned, was in the Hellfire Club. Her and her friend get into a fight with a policeman after them basically being prostituted in this story, and her trying to point out to the policeman that she's not having any of it and she is not becoming one of their Saturn bottoms, as they call them in this story. Now, Charlie and her friend manage to escape. Meanwhile, the Doctor is trapped still in the facility, and this man that is his cellmate seems to believe that the Doctor is completely insane. I mean, a guy from outer space, how could you possibly be insane? But the Doctor constantly starting to get bits of his memory back. The guy keeps on insisting that he's making it up, because of course this other guy believes himself to be the Doctor, pointing out that the whole exterior and this whole dimensional shift seems to have put the Doctor's mind into his, making the conflict and the resolution happen in this story. Now, the Doctor refuses to believe this man, and eventually the Doctor manages to escape after an explosion from the mind machine. Upon escaping, he comes into contact with Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, but the Brigadier has no clue who he is, due to his new regeneration. Now, the Doctor and the Brigadier start to come into contact with what they believe to be demons. Demons! And the Doctor frighteningly runs away. The Brigadier offers to help him and send him home. In doing so, he sends him back to the asylum, still believing the Doctor to be a mentally ill person. The Brigadier then, to add insult to injury, confuses the other man in his cell to be the Doctor. Of course, believing the other man to be the Doctor and believing the Doctor to be making everything up. Elsewhere, when Charlotte finally thinks that she's gotten out of the nick, she finds herself right back into the Hellfire Club and finds herself at the mercy of the occultist's leader. The occultist zaps her with a ray and deems her to become the bride of Lucifer himself. But before this whole situation, she points out to the demon that she doesn't quite believe that he's a demon and that he's making it up. After a spray of energy, the Doctor's mind gets split throughout all different people, now causing more people in the asylum to believe themselves to be the Doctor. The definite article, you might say. Eventually, the Doctor manages to get the mind wipe back, get his memories back, and finally manages to save the day, stopping the demons, stopping the occultists, and making time for tea. What did I think of Minute in Hell? Minute in Hell is a very good story on the side of basically playing with this whole concept of what do you consider a demon. It's also a very good historical story when it starts to bring in things like the Hellfire Club and the way that people were treated by people in that line of work. But I also like the whole juxtaposed position between the Doctor and this other guy who believes himself to be the Doctor, pointing out to the Doctor this whole idea of what makes someone mad. And the Doctor arguing back with him, well, if you think I'm mad, then what are you? I also like the way that, though, the writer has really filled in the little gaps as we progress in this story. For instance, when the two are bickering, they point out about this man being outside the TARDIS when the Doctor's mind gets split. I also like the idea how Charlotte very slowly gets her memory back as she's in the Hellfire Club. She starts flirting with people and starts thinking, but all of a sudden she starts to get this grasp back as she manages to find her own name. I also love the plot twist in which one of the demons happens to be her friend's Aunt Pappy. I think I've said that right. And for this reason, I give Doctor Who A Minute in Hell a solid 7 out of 10. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in another Doctor Who review. Until then, stay beautiful.